Hey everybody, it's Matt here. Wanted to do a contest response video, and this is for Branton Young. And Mr. Young just reached 100 subscribers, so he decided to do a contest. So my dog back there trying to hop up. Um, yeah, so congratulations on that, Branton. And sure you probably got more subscribers by now. Hope you get a lot more to come. And nice channel you got going there. But so you had a contest and you wanted us to talk about how we got into record collecting and what was the first record we bought with our own money. So I thought I would make an entry to just support your contest and give you a shout out there and everything. I've kind of run through this story several times, so I'll just make it quick because the people that watch my videos, all three of them, probably kind of tired of hearing it. But basically, got into record collecting. My brothers are 9 and 13 years older than me, so they were the perfect age when the Beatles came along back in the 60s. And they were into, of course, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Beach Boys, and all that good 60s stuff. So I kind of grew up hearing that from them and from their friends that lived in the neighborhood there and be around the house and so forth. But kind of heard it, and it was in the background and aware of it, I guess, but didn't really tune into it till about 1973 or so, when I would have been about 9 years old. And told this story before, but a friend of mine from down the street was over. It was raining. We were playing in the house, and he started going through my brother's records and playing Led Zeppelin, Three Dog Night, and that was pretty cool. And I was listening to that, and I was going through the records, and I picked up a copy of Magical Mystery Tour, which had been around. I guess they'd got it, whichever one of them had bought it when it was new. So I'd seen it around, but it's, just sort of never knew what it was somewhat, but just never paid attention to it. Put it on, and this first time I guess I really paid attention or tuned into it, and it just completely blew my mind, and I was Beatle bonkers from that day on. And so that's basically the short version of that story. But so yeah, of course, being 9 years old or whatever it was at the time, I didn't have money to buy records. Kept a lot of my brother's records because by this time they were up and out of the house and in college and whatnot. But I do remember they place called Treasure City used to be here in Fort Worth. It was kind of a dumpy little store. It was a big store, but it was kind of made Kmart seem like Neiman Marcus in comparison. But they had Let It Be and Introducing the Beatles on sale. I remember the ad in the newspaper. This was right around the time that I'd played the Magical Mystery Tour and sort of gone all crazy about the Beatles. And my brothers had, I don't know, like 5 or 6 Beatles albums, but they didn't have all of them. Maybe they had them at one time but didn't anymore. I don't really know. And those were 2 that they didn't have. So, and for those of you in England, Introducing the Beatles is basically Please Please Me, which was also released in America as the early Beatles, later on Capitol. But so those were on sale. I think they were like $1.99 a piece. I kind of remember the ads in the paper, and my parents took me down to Treasure City a few days later and bought both those albums for me. Then somewhere not too far later, I picked up a copy of Meet the Beatles and the Beatles' second album, and it was kind of fun to buy those Beatle albums that I didn't have yet. Didn't have the money, again, I said, because I was a kid, so I couldn't just go out and buy all of them. But I did enjoy that in a way, because you would get an album and you'd have to save up, or you'd have to get your parents to buy it for you, or you'd have to save up your allowance money, or if you got some money from birthday or Christmas or whatever kind of way you get money when you're a kid. And so when I'd get something, it would be just one album or even 145, and so I would just play it to death and totally absorb it and get to know it front to back and get into it. And so I think that's kind of cool, as opposed to if I had been a rich 9-year-old and could have just gone out and bought all the Beatles records that I didn't have yet. Probably would have just played them instead of here and there, or bits and pieces, instead of just totally delving into one album for a long period of time, because I didn't know when I would be getting another album. So far as and then even going back further, 67, I went all crazy over Light My Fire. I think I was about 3 years old, was hopping all over the house singing it, drove my family crazy, but my mom bought the 45 of that for me. And so, and I also remember my mom or dad bought me the Royal Guardsman album, the Snoopy versus the Red Baron, probably a year or so before that. But with my own money, you didn't really have money when you were 10, 9, whatever. And so I would mow lawns every once in a while in the summer, get a little money there, get a little Christmas birthday money. And the first album I remember, albums really, remember buying on my own were, I think I was in 7th grade, and I had mowed some lawns that summer here and there. I wasn't that industrious, so I just did it every once in a while. But, for $10 a lawn or whatever you did back then. But it was this older couple that lived next door to us, the Spears, and they, I don't know if they had kids or not. I don't remember if they would. They would have been a lot older than me anyway, but grown up and whatnot. But anyway, he died, and so she sold the house, and then into the house moves this hippie guy, with hair down to here and a beard, and he had a brand new Corvette. So anyway, he was never home, and I found out later that he was, hippie though he was also an engineer, so he worked constantly, and his yard got progressively higher and higher and higher. So I went down one day over there and knocked on his door when he was home and asked him if he wanted me to mow the lawn. He says, no, thanks, but I'll get it. I need to get it done. I'll try to get it done this weekend. Well, he never did, and the lawn just kept growing and growing. And finally, a week or so later, whatever it was, he saw me out in the front yard. He said, hey, you said you'd mow my lawn. You still want to do it? And I said, sure, He said, well, what are you going to charge for it? Without even thinking, I said, here's $75. Then as soon as I said it, I thought, man, he's never going to go for that. But much to my joy, actually, he just said, yeah, okay, man, go ahead and do it. And so I did. I mowed the lawn, which was by that point just so overgrown in the back and the front that it was like a 3-day project, but I got it done. And he gave me $75, which, and I think I was 12 or 13 at this time, so that was most money I think I'd ever had in my life. Felt like a millionaire, and $75 and 77 money is, whatever that is today, probably 150, $200 or something. I don't know. But anyway, so took my $75, and instead of doing something smart like opening a savings account, I headed to Sound Warehouse there on Berry Street. And records at that time were like $4.99 for single albums and $10.99 or something for doubles. So there were some Beatle albums, solo Beatle albums that I'd wanted for quite a while that I couldn't get because they were double albums. And that was a big expense. You had to wait for Christmas or whatever and hope your parents would get it for you and get your hints. I had got the White Album somewhere in between there for Christmas or something. But there were several that I didn't have yet, so I had all this money, so I went on a spending spree, and I bought Ram, All Things Must Pass, Concert for Bangladesh, Living in the Material World, and the Beatles Story, the double album, The Beatles Story, which I'd wanted for quite a while. And I was expecting great things. I was expecting, because this was back in the pre-internet days. This was back when there weren't a ton of books around about the Beatles or any bands for that matter. And I was thinking that the Beatles Story was going to have, and there was still, when there would be a book or magazine that came out, I'd buy it and devour it, or get my parents to buy it for me, devour it, and there was still new information about the Beatles to be had in those days for me. So I thought the Beatles Story was going to have the inside dirt and the whole story, and that this was going to really tell you all you need to know about the Beatles. And I was a little disappointed, to say the least. But I'm glad I had it. I love the cover of that album, and I still pull it out and play it every few years. It's not great, but I'm happy to have it. So those were the albums I got. I think that's all of them. I might have got Plastic Ono Band, but I might have got that later. I think I got that later, I should say. Um, yeah, and I loved all those albums. With the Beatles story not being a great album, but I'm still glad to have it. But this is great. Of course, All Things Must Pass and Ram and Living in the Material World. You know, everybody knows those albums. Um, yeah, and so I was getting Ram in like '77, and at that time it was not very well thought of, critically esteemed like it is nowadays. It was kind of trashed when it came out in '71, and I didn't get it then because I was 6 or 5 or 7. But you know, I always liked that album from the get-go. I always liked Material World, which didn't get very good reviews, I don't think, when it came out. And of course, All Things Must Pass was well received and all when that came out, and I like that. So I guess that answers your question. I hope it does. Um, so yeah, congratulations on your 100 subs, and hope you get a lot of responses. Hope they're more interesting than mine. and and thanks again, man. Take it easy.